Welcome back to the Wealth Witches podcast. I'm your host, Katelyn Magnuson. Today we have Leisa Peterson. Leisa is a money coach and a sudden wealth specialist who helps entrepreneurs revolutionize their relationship with money. After years working as a traditional financial advisor, she founded WealthClinic to address what the industry was missing, the behavioral and mindset aspects of wealth building. Author of The Money Catalyst and The Mindful Millionaire, Leisa was recognized by Forbes as one of the pioneering 10 women driving growth in wealth management and investing. She uses practical tools like the gap analysis to guide clients from their current situation to millions, focusing on productive assets, debt elimination, and automated savings systems. Leisa, welcome. I'm so excited for this today.
I'm so happy to be here, Katelyn.
So I know that you and I were chatting about this beforehand, and your bio can feel a little bit strategic, but what you and I were talking about was really like so much of this is the inner work. So before we dive into today's topic, can you just speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, even coming into this conversation, I was thinking about the fact that what I do is unusual, just like what you do, I think is unusual. And it's going to be fun to talk about it. But it's hard for people sometimes to get their head around this combination of having all this financial knowledge and experience. I've worked with people in money for over 30 years and also have this inner journey that is so rich and so robust and is for me started 26 years ago and involves a daily meditation practice and is very oriented to self-reflection and paying attention to how I feel in my body and so many other things. But what I think is helpful for people to understand is I've always been good with money. And sometimes people maybe aren't even excited about that because they're like, oh, whatever. But I'm here to say it doesn't mean that just because I was good at acquiring and making money, I had a healthy relationship with money. My relationship was really, really messed up and it was oriented to scarcity. And I didn't understand that because we didn't at the time live in a society that this kind of thing even got talked about. And it was only because of all these years meditating and then also helping people with money that I started to realize, like, first it was like other people are messed up. Like, they're all messed up with money. What's wrong with these people? And then eventually I was like, oh my gosh, I might be the worst of all. Like, I've got some really, really poor, sad, destructive money beliefs that are causing me, no matter how much money I have and how good I am with money, to not live the kind of life that I thought I would live when I built wealth. So that's what I want to say.
Okay, I love that. I also love that it took you a while to be like, oh, yeah, all of these other people. Oh no, maybe I'm the problem too. Maybe there are some things here because I feel like it's so easy. And I know I've seen it with clients, where you can see patterns repeating themselves. And then you do some self-reflection. You're like, oh, do I have some of those patterns? Do I have some things that maybe I should pay attention? It's a very nice mirror, I feel like, working with other business owners and getting to see the things that pop up because you do recognize the patterns. So I love that. I love the self-reflection and the awareness that has come about over the, multiple decades that you've been working in the finance space. So our topic today, I'm very excited for, and it's money as a catalyst to change. So I would love for you to introduce what that means to you, because I feel like that we could go a few different directions with that.
It really stems most recently from a book that I wrote. For the first time, I wrote a fictional parable because this relationship that we have with money is very complicated. And I felt like it would be easier to learn about it from someone else's experiences in a story than just reading a nonfiction book and like, oh, first I do this and then I do that. And that works sometimes. But what I came to actually at the end of the book was the fact that if we're open to it, learning more about this thing that happens, how we feel about money, how we experience money, if we're open to it as a guide, it can become a catalyst of profound transformation in our lives to the level that I continue to be blown away that I'm still learning and growing 30 years later. Like, every time I could listen to somebody talk like we are here, and just one seed of knowledge awakens an understanding of how I could live more fully, how I could stop sweating the small stuff, if you will. I could change the narrative inside of my head, as well as the narrative that I share to my community, that I share with my kids, that I share with my husband, that it's all up to me. And that's how money is this catalyst in our lives.
I think too that you touching on that small point, I know I've had these monumental shifts from the tiniest little pieces of, a phrase or a specific sentence or something that just finally made an idea click in my head for my brain because we all, have different lived experiences and we have different backgrounds and different ways of processing and thinking. And I do think that it's so important to consume information in a way, especially in the day and age where there's information at our fingertips everywhere. I think it can be really overwhelming sometimes, but I think consuming curated information, especially in areas that you're interested in, you have identified that, hey, I may have some limiting beliefs here. I may have some things that I need to dredge up that have been popping up. I'm able to make money really well, but I'm not a good steward of my money. Why is that? What's coming up for me? And I think being able to listen to different people, because I know we've had clients that they're like, hey, can you explain this topic to me? I know you've explained it before, or I know someone on your team has explained it. And sitting down and explaining it in a couple of different ways, and then you'll hit this point sometimes where they're like, oh my God, I've heard other people, this has been talked about. I've probably heard it 15 different times in different ways. And finally, there's a way that it's said or some little trigger that just clicks. And it's so magical. And so having seen it on both sides of it is just really delightful. So the floor is yours. I want to hear all about money being a catalyst for change because I'm a firm believer. I have my own really exciting, ways that I want money to be a catalyst for change in my life, but also collectively. So tell me all about
Yeah,
it.
thank you so much. Something that's coming in this moment is around love. And many people do not think of money as energy that could be energy oriented to love. Like we just don't live in a world that way. And money has been used in terrible ways, but can also be used in incredibly beautiful ways. And one of the things that I've discovered along this journey, and I write about it in my first book, The Mindful Millionaire, I decided to teach people's relationship to money through the lens of the chakras. And most of the time, people think chakras, like the root chakra, is all about safety and security. And therefore, that's where money falls. But what I did was I rewrote that whole narrative. And I said, no, it's actually way more complicated and also simple at the same time. But what's interesting is the heart chakra, love, in the middle, is this experience of us being in harmony and balance with giving and receiving. And if we just let that land for a moment, like this can show up in so many different ways. Like, let's say we just think about the work that we do. I have found in my wise 58 years on this planet in this life that if we are not in balance with the value we create in the world, so the giving that we do in our work and the receiving back for that value, we feel it in our heart at some level. There's something like, I'm not, like, it ties into worthiness. It ties into our ability to live a balanced and full life. And so the heart chakra is just the coolest thing, because when we start to think, wait a minute, this, maybe you're not being paid what you think that you should be paid in the work that you're doing, whether you're employed by someone else or you're just charging people as a self-employed person, all of a sudden you're like, this is like, I'm giving a lot, I'm giving a ton of value, but I'm not receiving back in measurable reciprocity
Mhm.
for that value. No wonder my heart kind of hurts when I think about, this thing that I've got. And so awareness is always the first step. And so what I think all of my work has tried to do is show people that you can't, run before walking. You've got to take baby steps. But if you could just become aware of what's not working and be honest with yourself about these things, then there's a pathway to change it. But if you don't begin that process of uncovering what isn't working in this relationship with money, it's going to be really hard to make a lot of changes. And so awareness, willingness to change, and then actually putting it into practice. That was one example of the things that I like to share.
Something that I'd be really interested in your thoughts on with this are, 'cause, we talk about pricing and you see it in the coaching industry pop up, or you see it in the online spaces and it pops up, and there can be so many different price points. Like, let's just take someone that's a photographer, for example. You can have five different people that are charging wildly different prices, and their packaging may be different. The way that they're selling may be different. The way that they're showing up may be different. So, curiosity, when you're working with a client and you're trying to identify, with that chakra, like, where are we? How are we feeling about this? I'm assuming, and this is the question here, is do you have people that pop up, they're like, "Ugh, I can't charge that amount. I can't XYZ. I can't do this." But they're also still stuck in this cycle of overgiving and under receiving for, compensation, time, etc., for the value that they're providing. How do you work through that with someone that is stuck in that loop?
I think it's got many different layers. So I'm just going to share a few of them that come in this moment. The first thing is, I always want to see, is someone being honest with themselves about what it is they need to live on, and
Mm,
what it is to live the life that they really want to live. Because if they don't have any idea of what that looks like, and then they're over here trying to build a business, it's going to create confusion and deficiencies because their energy isn't aligned with, like, this is what I've got to make. This is what I know where it's set. So I always want to
right.
understand, like, what do you understand how much money is kind of, we have a funny way, you'll laugh at this. A friend of mine taught me this. I love Lucy budget. For older people like me, you sit at home all day long, you do nothing, and you go nowhere. That's like your bare bones, I'm barely living budget.
Hmm.
It's important to know what that is. Then the next one up is like comfortable, I've got it all covered. And then you could have like a stretch, like, this is what it looks like when I'm living my best life. Know those,
Hmm.
because then when you go over and you start looking at, like, what are you charging in your business, I want to understand that that number, and now we bring that number over to the business you're operating. And I want to make sure you know what it costs to run your business and how you're going to get to that net
Hmm.
number after taxes and everything. But now we've got something to shoot for, of like, okay, this is your living your best life number. Then we go back and we look at the products that somebody is offering. And I want to understand that, are they offering products that tons of other people do? There is no differentiation. They don't stand out in the marketplace, because the price point for something like that's going to be a lot different than someone who's taken time to really develop their brand, develop the products and the unique features and the value that they're creating. So that's when we start to look at, who are you serving? Are you serving people that are deeply aligned with your highest and best value services?
Hmm.
Because if you're just giving high value services to people that can't afford them, then you're always going to be struggling with trying to sell it and feel kind of out of balance. And so I love to go through sort of the whole spectrum. And then ultimately, where we get to, which is often where people start, which is what I think is so funny, this is just the beginning, we get into things like sales techniques, and, like,
Mm,
are you able to hold the space for explaining what it is you do and the value that's being created, so that people are wanting to buy from you? So if all of those things aren't aligned, my sense is people will struggle. And
mm,
I'll also say this, I'm at a point in my life where we have enough money, if we're careful, to, like, live for the rest of our lives. We don't need to make more money. I don't get super excited by charging a lot of money. I could charge more than ever before
mm.
because I have more knowledge and wisdom. Now I'm, like, really in this phase of giving back. And at first I was like, am I like, is this a worthiness thing? Like, all these things.
Right.
I was like, no, it's a different phase of my life. Like, I really
Hmm.
want to help people who I might not have been able to help earlier in my career, because I needed to charge more, because I needed the money to live and to achieve
Right.
my objectives. So my point would be, never judge yourself and your situation to anyone else, and make sure that all the pieces in the process are well designed to support where you're going. Don't just listen to somebody say, oh, your sales needs to be better, because it might not be the problem.
Mm. Well, and that comes back to looking at everything from this holistic viewpoint instead of just one spot. You need to make more money. You need to have more profit. You need to sell more. You need to XYZ. And there's so many things that I feel like a lot of people want, a quick fix. It's sexier. It's easier to sell. Of like, hey, if you just 2x your business, everything will be fine. And it might be fine, but if you haven't addressed the other areas that go along with that and the other variables, you may just have bigger versions of the same problems and maybe stuck in the same cycle. And so I feel like it's so easy to forget that or overlook it because it's not, necessarily this like quick, hey, done, we're good to go. It requires a lot more introspection and work and, laying all of these details out. So yeah.
And I'm sure you see this all the time. We're looking to create sustainable income, sustainable wealth building, not this like, big up and down and all around. And that means that the principles that you're applying are consistent and going to be helpful to you today and also 10 years from now, not just trends. I think trends and
Mm.
like popular language or popular styles, like that's not what really moves the needle for building wealth.
I agree. And I don't know if you've ever compared this to it, but I see a lot of the financial realm as very similar to diet or fitness culture, where you have this quick fix or you do something that's not sustainable in the long term and you may get results from it right now, but is it something that you can maintain moving forward in perpetuity in some way, shape, or form that feels good, that works for your lifestyle, that, isn't get rich quick, all the things that can be really unsustainable for a lot of people. And I feel like there's so much overlap between the fitness and diet culture and the financial world for people that they don't always connect the two. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to be, feel good in my body and be able to go eat tacos and have a margarita every now and then while also getting my fiber in. What does that look like? So yeah, I love that you're bringing an element of that as well, to the financial industry. So come back to our topic of money being a catalyst for change. I'm going to give a little bit of one of the reasons I want to have wealth. And wealth looks different to everyone, right? You can have time wealth, health wealth, financial wealth, and the variations within that wealth could be very different. Someone could have $30 million and someone could have 300,000 and they may, feel very wealthy. For me, it's to be able to impact the change that I want to see in the world. And I'm a firm believer that anyone can make a difference regardless of the income that they have. I feel like we need more people with good hearts that have money, that have resources, that have time available to further their impact in the world. And I actually had an argument with my sister years ago, and she's a very black and white thinker. And we both came from kind of a lower middle class income family. And she was just raging against the machine, and I can make a difference and I can be grassroots. She's a teacher. She's a woodshop teacher, and she's not paid super well, and just raging, raging, raging. And she, I think, had some real issues with me wanting to have wealth, wanting to have, affluence to an extent. And I was having this conversation with her, and she thought that I was looking down or belittling her when I was saying that I wanted to have this to make a change. And I was like, you're doing wonderful things. How much could you do if you had $300,000 a year in income versus $50,000 a year in income? If you had more time, if you had more energy, if you were able to sleep because you're not working two jobs. And for me, money equals freedom of choice, freedom of opportunity. There's a lot that comes with it. So that's my version of what money as a catalyst to change looks like in my worldview. But what does it look like for you or for your clients that you've seen? Because I'm sure it can differ with them as well.
Yeah. Every single person is probably going to be slightly different on this topic, right? Have nuances. And I notice it even in my family because I have two adult children and they have different perspectives that I think might be helpful to share. But I would agree with you personally that when I left my role as a financial advisor 12 years ago, unfortunately, it was under a horrible tragedy that sparked it, but caused me to see that it was time for me to make a change. I couldn't have made the change of walking away from this very successful financial advising practice and just saying goodbye to my clients, which
Mhm.
nobody does, not till they're like ready to be done. And I was like 47 or something at the time. I had the wealth to back me up so that I
Mhm.
could make that change. And this was moving into a place of self expression, moving into creativity, moving into a world that I had never been able to be like indulge in. It's funny, a dream last night just came to me.
Mhm.
And it's so weird because I woke up and I couldn't remember. It was so intense. I couldn't remember like where I was. And the dream was about not being in the mothership anymore. So, like
Mhm.
working for a company for like 17 years and before that, other corporations. And the dream was still so vivid like, what am I going to do without this company to like give me benefits and all this stuff? And it's been
Mhm.
a long time, but like, that's what wealth gives us is that we don't have to stay in situations that don't allow our full expression as human beings. And keep in mind, even as self employed people, I've seen that we may find 10 years from now, we want to be doing a different self employment, not the same self employment. And
Mhm.
so, wealth gives us this freedom to say, I think I'm ready for a change. I've got enough money to make this transition. I'm going to do this. And many of us also, you've definitely touched a button here, but we're living longer lives than ever
Mhm.
before. We see people, this woman who wrote these books, The Choice and the Gift, she had lived through the Holocaust. She's a
Mhm.
psychotherapist. She's amazing. Can't remember her name in this moment, but she's like 97 and she's still giving talks around the world. Like, talk about the idea of reinvention and like fully showing up to our lives in whatever comes to us. I'm about in a few days, I'm going to Thailand for 40 days by myself, never been before.
I
Like,
love that.
I don't even know what's about to happen. It's going to be very spiritual, but like, that's the kind of life that I want to continue to live. And money allows us
Mhm.
to do that. And any thoughts on that before I talk a little bit about my kids? Because I think that's also
Yeah,
interesting.
I just for me, I think that I'm not even playing devil's advocate, but I feel like, well, so many people can do some of these things, right? Like someone could, for example, go to Thailand for 40 days that maybe doesn't have the resources. It might be stressful. It might not be as an optimal experience. It's not to say that those things can't still happen, but it can be like swimming upstream, I feel like, versus, swimming with the current and, working with your resources. Not, I hate to say swimming with the current in terms of like, conformity, but more swimming with the current and like working with the resources that you have and your desires and your interest and your intuition. And so that for me is something that it just facilitates ease of choice. So
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. And we live in very unstable times. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And we
Hmm.
don't know what the world's going to look like 5 or 10 years from now. And so, money does give us this agency to say, okay, maybe I'm more careful with my money now, but because I want it to last me in case things change and so on and so forth. But what I also think is fascinating is my kids grew up in the same home with a mom who was talking and father who would talk about money. We were very
Hmm.
open because we had seen that neither of us got that growing up. So we talked a lot about money. And they're both really great with money. But here's just a funny thing. My daughter has started a company a few years ago with her husband. It's taken off like nobody's business at the level that you couldn't even possibly imagine the success, like for a 28-year-old to be like managing this success. It's part of the reason that I talk about helping people with sudden wealth, because
Hmm.
I've learned so much about helping her and her husband build wealth from their business that I
Right.
like doing this kind of thing with other people. But one of the things that I ended up kind of interjecting into the character in the Money Catalyst book was inspired by Zoe. And what she does is she negotiates with the biggest brands around the world to create content for those companies to bring to on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And she has learned that until she hears a no from a
Hmm.
provider, she is not at the top price that
Hmm.
needs to be paid for that. Now, think about that for a second, everybody. Like, really think about that. Imagine that every time you go to propose, this is what I can do this for, you are looking for a number that is outside the realm of probably what you think is possible, but you feel that the value is there. You're not trying to take advantage
Right,
of
right.
people, but you're setting a high number for what you really want to be paid, and you're waiting for the negotiation, and that you're comfortable inside of negotiation, because
Mhm.
that is where that extra money between where you thought you could be and where you end up is where the wealth building is going to come in. That's where you're going to build the fastest amount of wealth, because you are going to make that flat amount no matter what.
Mhm.
But now you're talking about that premium that starts to go into your bank account. Well, she's doing that, and she's been doing that from day one. And I just am like blown away by it. So, skipping over to my son, he's 20, he's in college, really amazing, getting into investing. And it's so much fun to see the texts, and he's doing all kinds of stupid stuff. And I'm like, bring it on, because now is the time to make the mistakes. Now is the time to fail.
Mhm.
And he's buying these Instagram recommended penny stocks, like stuff I would never want him to necessarily do later in life, but he's having fun and he's making money and he's learning. And he's like,
Mhm.
oh no, it's gone up, but now I don't know when to sell. And I'm like, you're going to have to figure that out, buddy, because he's made $200. It's fine.
Right.
But the other thing about him is that he decided this year, and for next year, junior and senior year, he got a job as an RA and is living in the dorm so that he has no expenses for housing and for food. And we had the money to be able to pay it, but he wanted to make that contribution and was
Mhm.
willing to do that because it felt better to him. So everyone's idea of wealth and wealth building is different. What's most important is that we know ourselves well enough, and we listen to that, and we don't wait for permission, but we give ourselves permission to be who we are, and to really listen to like the wisdom that wants to come in about taking good care of ourselves financially.
That's what so much of this comes back to, is really taking the time to know yourself and to have those really authentic realizations or self-acceptance that I think can be so difficult. And I feel like as a woman, for so many of us, doesn't start happening until your 30s or maybe your 40s or maybe your 60s. My mom is in her 60s, and she is over the last 10 years or so, kind of started in her early to mid 50s, started going through, she became Reiki certified. My mom's a nurse. She's been a pediatric nurse for years, and she became Reiki certified. And, she's really kind of getting in touch with, like, she was raised Catholic, went to private Catholic school. Like, this is just not something that you do. And it's taken her so many years to get comfortable with, no, this is something that I really want to do, or I have interest in, and I want to explore this. Even if there might be people that are like, you're doing what? Like, whatever. And she feels comfortable and confident enough with herself to be able to do that. And something that I would love to see, especially for women, is more women feeling comfortable making those either, the choices or what might be seen as a mistake later. But like you said with your son, he has this freedom or this confidence to be able to go explore and go make mistakes and go try new things. And I think so many of us just don't feel safe doing that. Even me with, Wealth Witch, as I was telling you before we started recording, that, about 2 or 2.5 years ago is when I was like, we're gonna dip the toe and we're gonna combine these publicly. I've been doing this in my little shame closet privately at home, and it doesn't feel authentic. But like, what is everyone going to think? And being grounded enough in that, like, I don't care what they like. I'll find my people. They'll come to me. There are other people, and regardless, in the meantime, I'm feeling a lot better. I feel aligned with what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm only presenting half of myself or wearing a mask all the time, and that's really freeing.
Yeah. Yeah. The confidence is what I'm really taking away from what you're saying. It's over and over again, right? I've worked with people for this past 12 years. And then before
Mhm.
that, people who wanted help managing their money. And watching my daughter and the kind of success that she's had, I think the number one reason she's so successful is the confidence that she has in who she is and the value that she's bringing into the world. And in all fairness, she came from a very different background than I did. And so I give myself a lot of grace because it's been a journey for me to feel confident about
Mhm.
myself. And that's okay. I'm proud that I was able to like help this person become so confident in the world. And I think I have a lot of appreciation for the journey to build confidence. And even something that comes to me in this moment that people may or may not understand, but I'll share. I was a traditional financial advisor. I've got a complicated relationship with investing because I came from, my parents didn't even have a savings account growing up. We were, getting houses repossessed and credit card collectors, bill collectors calling the house that we had to disguise, that my parents were never home because we knew it was probably one of those calls. So for me to have become, a multimillionaire, like it's been a huge journey. But what I notice is that investing has always been something where I started out after I got my MBA in the early 90s. I had a really good run in the 2000s, started building my 401k. Everything was going great until 2007, 2008. And we got a phone call from our financial advisor saying $350,000 had just disappeared overnight because the auction rate preferred securities they were invested in had disappeared. We eventually got the money, but not for almost 2 years later. And so it messed me up with investing. That was a really traumatic situation. So I didn't catch the run up because I was so scared about like reinvesting money in the market. And I say like from 2008 to like, even though I was a financial advisor, I was being very cautious. Long story short, last year, I decided to move out of buy and hold traditional investing and move into learning how to use models for tactical asset allocation, which sounds like a very complicated word, but it's a statistical based model versus buy and hold. And it's been like a huge change because I had to retrain my mind.
Right.
But what's fascinating is because I made this change a year ago and it's doing so well, the portfolio is up over 30% because a lot of it's based on what is the statistics. It's kind of like an insurance policy investing, but it's fascinating to me because people normally won't change their behavior with money once they've been told buy and hold, which is very risky as you get older in life. Like when you're my age, it could take 12 to 20 years to recover a loss of 40%, 50% in the market. I don't want that to happen. So I needed to move to a different strategy. And people, by the way, if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, I want to learn more. Just write to me. I'm happy to. I don't do any of this, but I've learned from really great people who know what they're doing. I don't manage it. You're going to manage it. Nobody else is going to ever appreciate your money as much as you do. Nobody's managing your money. You're deciding what to do. You're just learning about it. But I just felt like I wanted to share that because there's this evolution. And again, I think I'm describing a catalyst of like, this wasn't going to work for me. I didn't have the appetite to be at the top of the market and put all of my eggs in that basket. I decided to go find something else, and I'm really happy with it right now. That's a catalyst of change.
Yeah. No, I love that. What a fun story too. I mean, I'm sure in the moment in the 2007, 2008 realm, having been coming into the workforce at that time was not a lovely time. And I remember my parents really struggling with it as well. And I could see how traumatic that would be, even for someone that had the knowledge that you had the background and the experience. You're seeing something that is going to make a long lasting impact. And so that does alter your behavior until you get to a point where, what is it? I'm going to butcher the saying a little bit, but you don't change until the pain of not changing becomes greater than the pain of change. Until there's some motivating factor, there's some catalyst, there's something that's getting you there. And I think that is really underlooked. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, maybe, but I shattered my ankle in 2019, and I've been wanting to move and wanting to move and wanting to move. I lived in Western Oregon. I'd lived there most of my life, and I really struggle with the rain. I struggle with the gray. I had a really tough time with it, and I freak accident shattered it on a giant slip and slide. Giant. It was horrible, and I ended up non-weight bearing for 12 weeks during the summer. And during that time, I talked to a realtor. I had surgery on my ankle. I listed my house for sale. We sold it in 4 days, and we were moved and in our new house in a different state within that whole like I was just in my walking boot as we were moving in. That it was such an interesting, like it's something that I've been wanting to do for years and years and years and always made an excuse. And all, the discomfort of change just wasn't, it was too powerful until I literally was stuck on the couch, unable to do anything. And I was like, God, what am I waiting for? It might be scary, but we're going to do it. And we did it. And it was just, I see it with clients, I see it in my own life, and it's so easy to just sit there and be stagnant until you have something else that really, kicks you into gear.
Yeah. And it could be on both sides, like the difficult circumstances, and it can also be like these beautiful experiences that we have in life that cause us to realize that we could do things better in our lives. And that was what inspired the Money Catalyst. Like I took a
Mm.
client of mine who had inspired my first book to Paris as a thank you, because
Oh.
she opened up her whole life story to me so that I could find a pattern. All my books always have a pattern related to them.
Okay.
I feel like money is all about patterns, pattern identification. So she opened her life to me, let me interview her for like 6 months. And finally, I saw a pattern that I saw in her life in all my other clients. And once I
Oh,
saw
okay.
that, I was able to write The Mindful Millionaire. So I invited her. She had never been to Europe, never been to Paris, never gone on this kind of trip. I paid for us to go for 10 days to explore Paris. And I thought I was going to show her this great experience. And it turned into the exact opposite, which was
No.
she was so in the moment.
Mhm.
Every second of that experience, it awakened a feeling of abundance that I had never felt because I had always lived so scarce. And then
Mhm.
she was making fun of me because she's like, she could see I was belaboring about like a cost of something, which was so stupid. And I was like, oh my gosh, stop, just stop. And I just surrendered to like Jenny's experience. Like Jenny
Oh,
said that we can get 5 dishes even though we can only eat 2 dishes, like
right.
Jenny said we can go just stare at roses for half a day. Like it was just hilarious. And the feeling she gave me caused me to realize that there was an opportunity for me to translate all of this work that I had done into a story that could inspire other people to question where they might not be living as abundantly as they could, regardless of how much money they have, because that's not what Jenny is about. Like she doesn't have the resources I do, and yet there she was living an incredibly, and still, I mean, does to this day live an incredibly abundant life.
That's amazing. I have two people in my life that really bring that out in me. And one of them is very wealthy due to a business that she sold, and very generous and very heart led. And it just really, I grew up, kind of equating rich with greedy, or, all of these, negative connotations that you can have. And she has been one of like five people, but the person that I know really intimately who came from a very working class background and has made a bunch of money at a very young age and just done amazing things and continues to be an amazing human. But I will never forget, I told her one time, because she was a client of ours, that I gave her an almost seven-figure number that she had to pay for quarterly estimated taxes one year for one estimated tax installment because her business was growing. I mean, she was just, it was wild. I waited 3 days to tell her because I was so anxious and this was such a huge number. And it, like, I know she had some anxiety and I was so stressed about it. And I shared it with her. And within 15 minutes, she said, "Okay, great. Thanks so much. That's been paid." And I was like, "Oh my God, I just spent the last 3 days like actively losing some sleep." And I'm not a particularly anxious person normally. And so it's not a common feeling for me. And I was like, oh my God. And so even now I come back to that regularly when I have, something that pops up like that. And I'm like, okay, but just remember when this happened and like someone, because I can tell someone they owed $4,000 and I get I can't believe this. Like, what happened? Why would I owe that? And so it was all of these, lived experiences and stories and my own money story. And it's such an interesting experience for me to have in the back of my mind when these pop up. And then my other friend who is a client as well, but she lives loudly and abundantly, and she is just so in the moment. And I traveled with her in Portugal at one point in time, and I can be a little introverted. I can be very realistic, very practical sometimes. She's making up stories to our Uber drivers about who we are and where we came from, and just, experiencing this like joie de vivre that is just so like out there and wild. And it was so much fun to just really like sit in that. And Joyce, I take little elements of that because I still am not just able to jump in the same way that she does, but it was so nice to be able to soak in that in the best way, really, and like absorb her energy and just it feels so fun. So I love that for you. And what an interesting experience, especially someone that's not, super wealthy or has the same resources as you to be living in this abundant. And you're like, wait, I can do this. I have permit. Oh, we can live like this. How fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny too, because my daughter is making a lot of money right now. And the other day she was like, "Oh, I really want some shoes." And she has a
Mhm.
ton of shoes because her company, everything gets given to her. And I don't know, let's say they're $150. And I was like, really, we're going to have this conversation? Like, I mean, it's so easy, but
Yeah.
she was struggling with it. And I was like, okay, you're not going to get any resistance. Like, how can I help you make this decision? Because I think it's okay. Like, you don't buy
Yeah.
anything because it's all given to you. Now you want something, you can go buy it. But like sometimes we do need partners in this process of like, okay, the patterns aren't working for me. I need to try a different pattern. Go
Hmm.
find a friend to help us. And we're here for a short time in this life. Like, we have no idea how long it's going to last. Not that we throw all caution to the wind, but I think there's a
Right.
lot of merit to really knowing like who we are, what's most important to us, and then being able to create a life around those things.
Absolutely. And I think it comes back to like value led spending or value led, you're following your like I don't for me, I have two pairs of heels that I love. They're nice, they're sparkly, they're comfortable. I don't own any other heels. All my other shoes are exceedingly practical. My mother has an entire closet full of shoes. She loves them. It's her thing. I would rather my mom has never paid for first class or business class on a plane. She is 5'10". I am barely 5'4". I will absolutely upgrade. I'll fly during the winter normally. So it's like I like going places in the winter because I live in a very cold environment. So almost everywhere is warmer than here. But for me, that's a non-negotiable. If I can upgrade to something or, make a compromise, and she thinks it's absolutely ridiculous. And so it's so interesting to see, how we spend differently depending on what we value. And both of them are fine. I won't go
Yeah.
spend like she spent, tens of thousands of dollars on shoes, I'm sure. That doesn't do it for me. No desire. I've
Yeah.
spent way more than she has on travel. So yeah, it's always so intriguing to me where different people have their values.
Yeah. I think it's sad because in the sort of financial realm where it's like pay attention to everything you're spending and like track it and be really budget conscious, like it's not that that doesn't help, but it can get really silly and out of
Mhm.
control. And like back to values, like what's the most important to you, and have you taken the time to even know what that is? Because some of us
Right.
live such busy lives. We've got kids, we've got work, we've got a busy, time volunteering or what have you. And it's like we just run from one thing to the next, and we don't spend enough time reflecting on like, well,
Mhm.
what would make me really, really happy? And not just because the friends are suggesting it, but because you really,
Right.
really value it.
Right. You're not doing what your friend is doing because, oh, that looks like the thing to do or the vehicle to buy or the experience to have. Yeah. What? And it comes back to being in touch. Like, what do you want? Who are you? What do you value? Where's your confidence?
I wish I had spent more time figuring that out
Yeah.
earlier in life. And I feel like now a lot of the things that I'm doing are because I have the time and I have the resources. And so I'm listening more fully. But here's the weird
Mhm.
thing that I'm learning: if we don't do it when we're young, it becomes harder to do it later in life. And a lot of my friends would not like, I have a motorcycle license, but I'm going to rent a
Mhm.
motorcycle in Thailand. I'm going by myself. I don't have, I've got places I'm staying, but I'm just making it up. I'm going to get scuba certified for the first time. Like all these
Nice.
new
Yeah.
things that are happening. I don't know a friend. I don't have one friend in my age range or older that would do what I'm about to do. Like I couldn't, if I asked people if they wanted to come with me, like it's just too much risk or fear or what have you. And this isn't a judgment to them. I'm just rare in that I keep reinventing myself. And that's a mindset that doesn't
Right.
naturally come to you, is my point. So you got to practice it. The earlier you start practicing it, the easier it is to keep doing it later in life.
I want to second the hell out of that because I solo travel every year. I love solo traveling. Every now and then I'll get to meet up with someone or I'll make a friend while I'm there, but a lot of times it's just me for the time that I'm there and it's delightful and I really enjoy it. But I was encouraged to both solo travel, to travel in any way, shape, or form by my Nana, my dad's mom, who traveled the world. My papa never traveled with her. She went to China, she went to the Great Wall. Like, I mean, and she's in her late 80s now, but in her 40s, 50s, and 60s. She'd road trip across the US with my dad and his brother when they were little. Like she was constantly doing things and she encouraged, especially as my papa's health, failed and then he passed away and she spent 10 years caretaking for him and was unable to do things. And, now she's in her late 80s and she can't do as much. She doesn't have the stamina. She has aches and pains and she just isn't as her capacity is less. And she highly encouraged it when we were younger. And it's something that I've kept up with. But I've noticed even in myself, I'm 35. And compared to when I was in my early 20s, my risk tolerance was significantly higher for new things. And I've become, and I hate to say this, ever so slightly more conservative in my tolerance for risk with life choices. I broke my ankle when I was 29, and that I'm still dealing with the aftermath of that. And so that may mean like, do I want to go hop on the motorcycle with my husband? Do I want to go snowmobiling at 65 miles an hour? Like even with all my protective gear on, because I know what it was like to work, you have the trauma, the lived
Yes.
experiences. And so you to push through that and continue to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable. And so I try to do something new each year to keep that familiarity with being uncomfortable, because I do think that it is so easy to just stop. And when you
Yep.
stop, it's really hard to try and get that going again.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, my whole life just flashed before me because it's ups and downs, and it wasn't a sure thing that I would end up where I am right now. Like, I think I just shut a whole bunch of stuff out and something
Mm.
inside me changed. I actually got invited to speak in Bali at a retreat, and I hadn't been there before a couple of years ago. And then that started it. And then I survived that. And then I was like, okay, I can do this.
I can do it. Yeah. Well, and that's a nice stepping stone to it, right? Because like that's a big leap, but you're invited, it's literally being asked to come somewhere, which feels, I think, a little bit easier than just being like, gonna go. So I'm
Yeah.
sure you will have such a wonderful time. I have several friends that are scuba certified that just absolutely loved it. And several of them got certified outside of the US. So what a delight. Lisa, this has been so much fun. And I know we have both of your books that we're going to link in the show notes. Where are your favorite places if you want someone to message you, if they do have questions, like we were talking about, email, Instagram, website, where's the
Yeah.
best place?
Email is perfect. So
Okay.
lpeterson@wealthclinic.com. Ask
Okay.
away. Happy to help. Happy to be in service. And yeah, if you're interested in the chakras, and I have
Mhm.
a quiz, that might be a fun thing to check
Oh,
out.
cool. Okay.
That's at wealthclinic.com/quiz. And then you can figure out what of your chakras are out of balance with
Mhm.
money. And then it takes you on a pathway. And it's just fun stuff to like
Yeah.
explore and
Who
see.
doesn't love a good quiz too? I mean, I'm a sucker for a good quiz. So,
Yeah. Thank you so much.
of course. No, this was really delightful. Oh my goodness. Okay. I love it. Thank you. That's a wrap for this episode of the Wealth Witches podcast. I hope our magical money talks have left you feeling empowered and inspired. Remember, wealth isn't just about dollars in the bank, it's about abundance and financial freedom in all aspects of your life. I'm Katelyn Magnuson, encouraging you to keep challenging the status quo and embrace your inner witch on this financial journey. Until next time, stay magical.